with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. Rich, man, a lot to talk about today, but I'm looking right now at a map, and not just any map, but a map of Greater Idaho. Greater Idaho. And there's actually 5 counties in Oregon that is going to vote to leave Oregon and join an expanded Idaho. But it's not just roughly half of Oregon that's voting to leave. There's a huge chunk of California in this as well. It actually extends all the way to the Pacific Ocean. So Oregon will have an ocean coast here. Oceanfront property in, Idaho.
Idaho
will actually have oceanfront property in Idaho.
Yeah.
Hey, I think that's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, it's called the Russet Syndrome. And also the Idaho does have which I passed once on the way to Jackson Hole, the Potato Museum.
Well, I guess that is now going to extend all the way to the Pacific. Hey, but think about it. This just shows you, how politically divided our country is. And you have a relatively small population in the Portland, Oregon area that's driving the political policies of the state. And a lot of people don't want to live under those policies. And they feel they have no voice. They feel culturally that they're completely disconnected from the political powers in the state of Oregon. And this same sort of movement is also gaining traction in California. I mean, if you looked at the amount of the state of California landmass that would vote to leave the state, the California that we know it, the political elite of California as we know it, would just be very, very small in landmass.
Well, there are an awful lot of conservatives in California. Look, in the last election, in spite of everything that happened and the president didn't get in, which is incredibly sad to me, but a lot of people did get in. The right people, people trying to get back into what were Democrat areas are now Republican areas. Close to Irving, California, where I used to go an awful lot. And, John Wayne. It's the home of John Wayne, for God's sakes. Let's get that straight. I have to tell you this. Now that you brought up Idaho, this is my segue. Really quick, I have to tell you this. The saddest thing I heard today is that the neutral gender crazy culture folks that are out there have eliminated, get this, and I'm very sad, Mr. Potato Head is no longer, this is true, no longer Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head. They will now be known strictly and only as Potato Head. and Hasbro caved into that, which it incredibly made me sad. As a child, I used to play with Mr. Potato Head. So this is how insane we become. So I think all those counties should move to Idaho and try and regain some normality.
And another big topic today, another big headline was that Pfizer and their vaccine is 94% effective. 94%. That's effective.
The one I got.
You're all good to go.
Flowing
right
through my veins right now, hanging out.
And I'm waiting to get mine. But there's a lot of people who say that they won't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are saying they are still not comfortable to go out even once they get the vaccine. And we're going to talk about that right now. And you'll be surprised that there's still a large part of the population that is just not buying into this vaccine and the good that could come out of it. We're very pleased to have back with us Mark Hammrick. He's a senior economic analyst at Bankrate.com. Mark, welcome back to Made in America.
Always a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
So it was very, very nice to read today about the Pfizer vaccine at 94% effective. I know Moderna is also, is gotten very, very good marks on its effective rate. You got Johnson & Johnson now, it looks like they're going to get approved for at least emergency use for their vaccine, and you only need one shot of their vaccine and not the two that's needed by Pfizer and Moderna.
And that's about 74% of efficacy.
Right. And so there's a lot of good news coming out of the vaccine world, but it doesn't mean that people are still going to be comfortable. So, Mark, I mean, you have a piece that you're quoted in on Bankrate.com. Very, very, very fascinating numbers here. 30% will not take the shot. 30% of the people will not take. My wife is one of them. I got to tell you, when I tell her I'm going to get this shot, she says, "You're crazy. Why are you going to put that stuff in your body?" She's very passionate about it. So I know how passionate people can be not to take the shot. And still 24%, you say, won't feel comfortable to go out even once they have the shot. So what's going to happen with this economic recovery that we're all expecting once we have this herd immunity and the vast majority of Americans have the vaccine? So, very, very astounding. What do you say about that?
Sure. I think yours is the first house divided over the vaccine that I've heard of, but I can imagine based on our survey findings that it actually is more common out there. One of the great things about my job, which I love anyway, is the opportunity to basically come up with ideas for surveys, work with my colleagues to conceptualize what they should encompass, and then we work with polling companies, in this case YouGov, to do the work and to try to replicate essentially the way that Americans are thinking through that survey data. And then it comes back, in this case, to me to analyze, look at the spreadsheet, see where people are thinking about this, and then we come up with essentially analysis of that. I do the analysis, and then we do a press release, and then I get to talk to great people like you about it. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was, we harkened back really to about a year ago when it became obvious this pandemic was the likes of which we've never experienced before, not only with respect to the health aspects, the death aspects, but also the impact on the economy. And so then the question becomes all along is, how do we get out of this? Thank goodness for, science and technology and ingenuity, which have delivered these vaccine solutions. And, the science is there. And, in the same period that we're celebrating the landing of an American rover on the Mars and sending back amazing, video and information back to our home planet here, another representation of the triumph of technology and science. Indeed, we have the same with essentially the stellar and amazingly fast rollout of these vaccines, some of the work of which, harkens back over a decade where it was implemented and put into place. So essentially the finding is that 70% of Americans are willing to get a COVID-19 vaccine of one form or the other, and 30% are not. There are all kinds of cohort dividing lines, groups that tend to be more in favor or not. Republicans tend to be less eager to take the vaccine. Democrats are more so, and there are all kinds of other differentiations we could go into if you want. And then the other part is, of course, we're dependent on the pandemic being basically put behind us for the actual fuller reopening of the economy at a time when we're talking about the official number of unemployed being 10 million and more than 10 million who are either underemployed or have left the workforce but would still like to work, and you're talking about 23 million in total. So, we're dependent on that to get the economy back closer to a place that would be familiar with what we'd experienced basically before February of the year 2020. So about 3/4 of Americans say that they are essentially eager to re-engage with the businesses that they would have typically re-engaged with in the past once they are vaccinated. And then about 1/4 of Americans say they would be uncomfortable doing that no matter what. Now, that doesn't mean they won't do it, but at least they have some lingering fear or mistrust, essentially, about whether that's the right thing to do.
I find it interesting. Some people are I've had the shot. My wife has had the shot. My sister's had the shot. My partner has had the shot. I think my dog Bogart has had. No, that was the border tell. Never mind, wrong shot. But But some people are very passionate, which I think I understand, where some of them are coming from. And I do believe it's very unfair that the media was very subjective about this vaccine, going back to when Trump was announcing that we're going to get this, we're going to work on it, we're going to have it hopefully by the end of the year, maybe the beginning of next year. And then right away the assaults came out. That, oh, my God, he's going to do this. And if Trump's part of it, the Democrats said this. If Trump's part of this, I want nothing to do with it. I don't trust it. It's not going to be safe. I thought it was very, very unfair for the media, who they always tout and say, oh, we got to follow the science. They didn't follow the science. And I find it's very, very sad that that's the route that a lot of people took. But I think a lot of people are very excited to be able to get the shot and get back to a sense of life.
Well, I hope you're right. And, I can't address the other issues with respect to any given journalist treatment of that story back in the day. But listen, media is different broadly now. I don't tell anybody that than it was, let's say, when I was growing up, 2 centuries ago. But in the sense of there was, the sense of true broadcasting in the literal definition of the word, where the only access you had to disseminating information broadly was because you had access to a printing press, you could print a newspaper, a magazine, etc., or you had access to a broadcast tower. And these days, you have to have access to the thing that I'm speaking to you on, which is a smartphone, to disseminate information. And so that's created a lot of problems, which was represented in the reactions on the part of governments, really all over the democratized world, trying to figure out what is the appropriate regulation to keep essentially untruths from being widely disseminated, especially in the case where there are negative intentions with respect to that dissemination of information. In other words, the undermining of democracies, et cetera.
Mark, can we got to take a quick break. Let's just stop there for a second. We're going to get right back to this. We're with Mark Hammrick, Senior Economic Analyst at Bankrate.com. Still a lot more to talk about. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we're together with Mark Hammrick, Senior Economic Analyst at Bankrate.com. So, Mark, you're talking about, how the media has changed, and yes, and wow, has it ever. And I do remember very vividly many politicians telling the American people, don't take this shot. It's been rushed through. This is a Trump thing. It's very bad. I'm not going to take it. We're not going to take it. Our states don't even want to have it. Blah, 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 blah. And this whole negative thing out there, because it was all about politics. It was all about personality. It wasn't about policy. It wasn't about the science. It was about a personality that they did not like. So they were coaching them, their constituents, to do something that was fundamentally bad for them. Don't take this vaccine. Now, all of a sudden, in your report, it really struck me that it's Democrats who are more likely to get the vaccine, and it's Republicans who are more likely not to get the vaccine. And again, politics, not science, is playing the role of who should get this. And let me tell you, our businesses are suffering, and boy, are they suffering. And because people are not going out, people are not going out to restaurants. The whole supply chain is breaking down. All of the businesses that rely on a very successful economy to provide products and services, it's just not there in our entrepreneurs, our small businesses, our risk takers. They're struggling. They are hurting right now. We got to get this vaccine distributed. People have to take it, and people have to feel comfortable to get on airplanes again and travel and go to restaurants and go to museums and go back to Broadway and all. But it's not happening, and it can't happen fast enough. Rich?
Well, interestingly, I'm in Coral Gables. My business is at the Biltmore Hotel, and it's publishing. So we're out and about and interview a lot of people. I have to tell you, South Florida is working South Florida is functioning. South Florida is getting the shot.
South Florida, I mean, the whole state of Florida is free.
Yeah.
This is going to be, free Florida.
Yeah.
As opposed to lockdown New York or lockdown California.
This is sort of like Kansas versus Missouri, back in post-Civil War. But the truth of the matter is,
Kansas, by the way.
What?
You realize I'm a Kansan, so that really struck it.
As I said, I've always liked Kansas. They're great people, wonderful. The roads in Missouri are terrible. When you cross over into Missouri, as I was once told to call it. But yet anyway, it's a dichotomy. But the truth of the matter is, Florida is functioning. We're vibrant. The restaurants are crowded. I'm at the Biltmore, and we had Sam from the Biltmore on last week, and he was talking about how they've gotten their numbers back. And I got to tell you, I was there Saturday night with Manny Mencia and Ivan from, the state of Florida. And crowded, packed, all the tables at Fontana were taken. The parking lot was full. It's happening. So I'm thinking there is a pent-up energy. There is a need to get out. We're gregarious people. And yeah, I think when we get a little bit more down the road, people are going to say, you know what, I got to get out. I got to do something, and I'm going to get that shot.
Mark, what do you think about the difference between the Florida approach and, say, some of the more,
Illinois,
harsh Democrat,
pick Illinois, pick California, pick Illinois, pick Oregon, pick any of the
states,
blue states.
Florida, it's vibrant. It's moving. It's grooving. People are coming here. People are coming here for vacation because they got to get out of these other places. What do you think about that?
Well, I look at it from, sort of the economic or Bankrate perspective and the politically agnostic perspective, and that is, I think it'll be left ultimately to history to decide what the appropriate health response was here, because we know that basically the Trump administration made a concerted decision to essentially not have, at least with respect to the things you're talking about, a centralized federal response to basically dictate what the rules should be. And therefore, we had this sort of, red state, blue state approach to either strict regulation, very often also even within a state. For example, I live in one county in the state of Maryland that has taken a stricter approach, and yet we have, much the same as every other state, there are parts of this state that, by the way, is governed by a Republican governor that have had, much more lax.
I wouldn't call Hogan such a Republican governor.
Yeah, right. Just like Mueller was a registered Republican. All right, just saying.
Yeah.
Just had to throw that in. Couldn't help it.
My point for me. I think you're making my point for me.
Oh, good.
That even within the Republican Party, there's a disagreement as to what that means. And the same in the Democratic Party, right? Obviously, one of the challenges for the president is going to be keeping the progressives essentially on that reservation. So
But Mark, isn't it true, though? Isn't it true that Trump really never had the authority to go into the states and tell the states what to do? That's the way that this country has been created. And by the way, when Biden said that he's going to restrict travel to Florida and, he's going to punish Florida because, Florida is a free environment and is making him look bad, he can't come into Florida and tell DeSantis what to do. Our states have a lot of authority. That's the way our Constitution has.
Yeah, federalism.
Yeah, that's what America's all about.
It's really not, my lane to weigh in on that question. I want to try to stick to the questions that are key for Bankrate. And that is that, to answer your earlier question, I think all that will be decided by history. What was the right response? And I think we're a little close to it right now, but, I think that for sure, I don't know that there was anyone who could really brag that their response with respect to constraining or restraining the outbreak itself was successful, right? Because with all the lockdowns they've had in California, our son, who's 29, lives in Los Angeles. He's seen that firsthand where, lockdown not, yes, no, blah, blah, blah. And yet they've had as bad an outbreak of COVID out there as anywhere. So, I'm not going to try to prejudge history on who was right and who was wrong about that, but it certainly has made for volatility in, for example, the regular reporting of weekly jobless claims, where we see, in one state like Florida, 1 week it might be up, next week it might be down. California's been up and down. There's been a lot of fraud, and I think all that will be judged by history as to God forbid if we ever have to witness another pandemic again, or at least that risk.
Hey, Mark, we're going to need to leave it there. We really appreciate your thoughts. Very good segment, and we appreciate you being with us.
Thank you. Take good care.
Mark Hammrick, Senior Economic Analyst for Bankrate.com. Rich, we have Vince Bielski coming up. He's former Bloomberg reporter and editor, and we're going to talk about the sort of thing going on between the unions and the environmentalists, and how Biden is trying to play both sides. It'll be interesting to see what the outcome of this is. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. So, Rich, President Biden's got a real challenging, well, he's got a lot of challenges, but one of the bigger challenges is, how is he going to manage, his relationship with the unions, right? Mm-hmm. And unions, it's all about jobs. Well, it should be about jobs. I know unions a lot of times is about the money flowing, to unions in different forms of federal money and state money to. Does it go to help and benefit their community and the people who are members of unions? Probably not as much as they would want you to think, because a lot of that money is just recycled back into the political parties.
It's political bucks.
It's
political bucks.
Of which, the vast majority is going back to the Democrat Party, right? So the state, federal money going to the unions, and then the money being recycled back into the political parties. And then you got the environmentalists, and they have some real strong opinions on what the energy grid of the United States should look like. I mean, very different than it does today. So you have something like the Keystone Pipeline. We've talked about it a lot. Lots of jobs, lots of high-paying jobs, something that the union should very much support. And then you have the environmentalists who essentially wants to close down all fossil fuels, the incredible jobs that they create, and go to a completely green energy grid. And a lot of union jobs, obviously, are going to be put at risk by doing that. And, in fact, jobs of all kinds, entrepreneurial jobs, small business jobs, jobs of all kinds and all stripes, because let's face it, the energy industry in the United States is a huge generator of prosperity. And that means a lot of people employed by energy-related jobs.
Well, it's not just that. Just think of all those who are touched by energy. Everything that is delivered in the United States, anywhere in the world, is touched by energy. You have to ship it. You have to get it there. Or energy is used in the medical field.
Or all kinds of products.
Energy is used in products that we're wearing. It just cuts in so many ways. So when you start manipulating that, the unintended consequences that most Janes and Joes don't think about is that they will be touched. I don't care whether you own a car or don't own a car. It doesn't make any difference. You are going to be touched. And you're going to be touched in ways that you're not going to like. You're going to feel like you work for Cuomo.
Whoa.
Had to throw it in. I couldn't help myself. Couldn't help
Well, let's
myself.
bring on Vince Bielski right now. He's a former Bloomberg reporter and editor, and he is now a writer for Real Clear Investigations, and that's part of Real Clear Politics. And we love that organization. They do incredible work. So, Vince, how is the president going to balance what's good for his union friends, which is jobs and energy jobs, and environmentalists who wants to shut that whole thing down?
Biden has a tricky compromise he needs to make, because he's promised labor unions that he would be on their side and help protect jobs. And he is also moving aggressively to reduce emissions from our fossil fuel electrical grid. And these two goals are in conflict to some degree. Let me clarify that if you want to take carbon out of the grid, you do that with wind and solar and battery power, and you still leave fossil fuels in the grid. So where Biden wants to go is to have a mix of all these different energy producers, and by the next 15 years, which is a very aggressive timeline, take all the carbon out by wind and solar power, nuclear power, which has been a real development in the last 10 years, the acceptance of nuclear power as a positive in the environmental community. And I think the environmental community has come a long way in realizing its importance, as well as leaving natural gas. Natural gas is going to be part of the grid for decades to come. So the real problem is coal and coal-fired power plants. And that's where the unions are most worried. Because right now in the United States, there are about 160,000 jobs related to mining coal, transporting it, and burning it in electrical plants. And those are the jobs that are most in jeopardy, and they're already going away because coal electricity is just not as economical. It's not as cheaply to produce as these other forms of power. So coal miners, people that work in coal plants, they have nice middle-class jobs. They're making about $80,000 a year, and those jobs are going to go away. And what they're telling Biden, what the labor unions are telling Biden is, don't go too fast, because you're going to make these jobs go away too quickly. Let's extend the deadline for cleaning the grid to maybe 2050 or beyond, and let's preserve these jobs as long as we can. The environmentalists on the other hand, are saying, no, we have to get rid of coal like tomorrow. Or not realistically, not tomorrow, but I would say in the next decade. And so what's in the balance are really two things here. All those fossil fuel jobs, there's really, when you close a fossil fuel plant and you close mines, and hundreds have closed, you devastate these towns in West Virginia, in Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Wyoming. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. So what these unions are telling Biden is mostly, let's find ways of transitioning these workers to other types of jobs. It's a tough thing to do, and that's what makes Biden's job difficult. On the one hand, he wants to clean the grid as quickly as he can to reduce the threat of climate change. On the other hand, he wants to protect these coal jobs and to some extent the natural gas jobs as well, because there are a lot of polluting natural gas plants, and newer technology, newer generations of natural gas have improved upon those facilities. So he's really caught in the middle, and in the next couple of months he's going to have to make some decisions on how to reconcile the commitment to the environment and the commitment to labor, and particularly the coal side.
Hey, Vince, great update for us. Very, very good. I don't know how he's going to have it both ways, though. He's just not going to be able to get there. He's going to have to let somebody down. Hey, Vince, thanks for being on the show. Vince Bielski, he's a former Bloomberg reporter and editor, and he's currently a writer for Real Clear Investigations. Thanks for being on with us.
Absolutely. Glad to be there.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman still has a lot more to say about this topic. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, who is sitting with me right now and wants to jump in on this discussion. Hey, Rich, I don't get it, because a lot of our electricity, a lot of our electric grid is coming from coal.
100% right.
Well, not 100%.
Well, it's coming from fossil fuels.
It's coming from fossil, and a lot of
natural gas.
So when you talk about, we're going to go with electric cars, and they got to plug into, the outlet somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. What where's that energy coming from, right? So it's still coming from fossil fuels. And the other thing that strikes me is just the battery storage capability of vehicles right now. I mean, it's just not there yet to be able to, go for, several hundred miles on a tank of gas and then easily find a place to refill and then go several hundred more miles, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to take a trip across America? You're going to get out of the big city and there's no place for you to fuel up or energize yourself? And the other thing I would like to say, there is a lot of technology in carbon capture, meaning that, the fossil fuels, yes, they burn and they have emissions, but you can capture those emissions before they get into the atmosphere.
That's exactly correct.
And, that whole technology, America is a leader in that technology. I mean, we could be even so much further ahead. Look, nuclear power. America is a leader in nuclear power. But we closed that whole thing down because of the environmentalists.
Yeah, Jane Fonda.
We closed it
Michael Douglas.
For how many years? There hasn't been a nuclear power plant built in the United States for 30 years. And the first one is being built right now in Georgia, actually. It's just outside of Augusta. And the fascinating thing is that the nuclear power plant in Georgia, which is northern Georgia, being built right there where the border of Georgia and South Carolina, and the power is all going to Florida. So they're building a nuclear power plant in Georgia to supply power to the state of Florida. But that's the first nuclear power plant that's been built in decades.
No, in a quarter century.
And I don't know of any others that are planned. Maybe I'm wrong, and somebody can correct me on that. But we basically shut that down, and it's not like you just turn it back on. And in the permitting and the approval process of building one of these,
it's forever.
Plants is forever.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like a generation. So. I plan on opening and developing a nuclear power plant. It's going to be my grandkids who actually see it opened, right? So, it takes so long for this thing to happen. So I'm glad that nuclear power is back into the discussion, because I think it is.
It's used in Europe.
It's affordable.
And it's great.
It's affordable, it's clean, and all these things. And America is a technology leader, or was before the environmentalists shut it down. And but it looks like they're now going to try to do the same thing for fossil fuels, or they are, and it looks like successfully doing it with Biden.
Well, they will be successful with Biden, and they will push this through, and they won't care about the average person, the average worker in the United States. I don't be real clear about that. I don't see any benefit. Let me ask you a question. If we were to say we're going to save, first of all, anyone says to me we're going to control the climate on this planet, it just reminds me taking base metals and turning them into gold in the Middle Ages. It's that you're not going to control this planet. But even if we could, and even if everything worked in the Paris Climate Accord, everything that we did and everything everyone else did was perfect, the ultimate response to that is less than 0.2 degree of Celsius, in 100 years from now. And the whole point is, it doesn't matter. We're doing a great job right now. We are putting out fewer emissions than we did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. We're excelling at that. Our water, everything is wonderful. But if China and India don't do something with what they're doing, and God forbid we have a few volcanoes go off in the year, then everything's off. Then what's the point? You want to put 1.5 million people out of business? You want to do that? You want to take 400,000 people? And that's what it was a few years ago with Obama. They said, if we do Paris Accord, oh, my God, we're going to have 400,000 energy workers will be out of business. All right? That you want to do all of that is probably a lot worse now. And that's just in the energy business. Trickle down again into the rest of the country. A lot of people are unemployed. It was just stated that with XL Pipeline being canceled, Montana, Wyoming, and 9 other states are suing the federal government because they're going to have to let teachers go. They planned and built their schools up for the people moving there to work on the pipeline. And they're not going to be there now. So they're not getting their money. So they're not getting the tax base. And they're letting people go. This is just off the wall. If it would do something and we could really say, we're going to lower the temperature of the earth and raise it, not do this, not do that. All right, maybe I'd listen to it if I really had science and not religion, the religion of energy, the religion of climate change, which is the words that became after the global warming wouldn't work. But I don't buy into any of this, and I don't want to destroy the economy of the United States just so we can do something maybe kind of, sort of.
Well said. Hey, Rich, we're going to have to take a quick break. We're going to be back just in a moment for some final thoughts of the day. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, a lot of other very, very big issues in the news, things that are definitely important to our economy. A headline this week, Costco raises minimum wage to $16 an hour. I think that's great. I think it's good. I think it's wonderful. Costco...
Free market economy.
Yeah, and that's great. Costco is very much a urban, suburban organization. I mean, where their stores are. Look where their stores are, right? I mean, very successful. My goodness, have they been successful. My wife loves Costco. She goes to Costco. That's her store. She's there all the time, bringing home all kinds of things we don't need because she's seen a demo and she had to have it. And
400 Zephyr Hills. Not 24, 400.
I don't know how many air fryers we have right now, but
I get
every
it.
time they do a demo, she's going to have that one.
I actually buy televisions from Costco because they have a great program, and they're incredibly nice when you have a problem.
Well, you could.
I just want to tell people that.
Well, you could return your grandmother there. I mean, that's how liberal their return
Anyone
policy
see
is.
Granny Smith anywhere? Yeah, we took her back.
Bring it back.
We
to
took
Costco
her back.
Yeah,
no, we got a good price for her. We got a 65-inch LG for Grandma. Just saying.
Well, but look where their stores are. So $16 an hour probably makes sense, right? It makes sense. But I mean, if you're in rural America and you're talking about, where living costs are so much lower, $10 an hour, $11 an hour, $12 an hour is even worth more than $16 an hour in many of these locations where Costco is. So God bless Costco for raising the minimum wage to $16 because I think they're in markets that supports that. Obviously they are, and that's why they did it. But if you're in markets that you can't afford to pay $16 and where a $10 to $11, $12 is in net spending ability is more than a $20 job in New York, then those people should not be put out of business because they cannot afford to pay the higher minimum wage, right? America is not a one-size-fits-all country. We're not. And
that's why central planning never worked in Russia.
We talked about
in the revolution.
We talked about Greater Idaho. I mean, there are different communities with different needs and different thoughts, and there's different economic realities in our communities around here, and that's wonderful. That's the diversity. That's what makes us great. But this one size fits all coming out of Washington is going to do the exact opposite. Instead of creating prosperity and getting people out of poverty, it is going to put more people into poverty because many people can't afford to be operating in those areas because the economy just doesn't support that level of wage.
Well, no, it doesn't, and I was very, very pleased to see that. That was an upbeat for me this week, whereas Mr. Potato Head was very sad. But I was thinking about this whole scenario of what's good and what's bad and what's up and what's down, and how these unions, the head of the union said and felt when the first thing that Biden did day one was unemploy at the very least 11,000 union workers. It's probably many, many more than that. Could be a million workers by the time you get done with this whole thing, ending the pipeline. And it's sort of like when JFK went to Frank Sinatra, and they needed Frank Sinatra to deliver the Chicago mob in Chicago to get the vote out for JFK, and it was a little nefarious too, by the way. So they went out and the mob went ahead. Trafficante went ahead and got the vote for JFK. He won. He won marginally.
Oh, very,
against.
very.
I mean, we're talking about like 1.5%, 1%. I mean, really small numbers. Hundreds and hundreds in Illinois. Illinois threw it to him, and he won. Okay, what happens day one when JFK is in? He's inaugurated, and Bobby's heading up. The Department of Justice. He's the Attorney General. They indict Trafficante. They indict the one mobster that actually helped JFK get elected, and they deported the guy. With extreme prejudice. So there's your comparison. Now, how do you think the mob felt about that? We can discuss that some other time. There were repercussions to that I don't think JFK anticipated. That's how the Union feels right now, if they have any soul left in their body.
Very, very well said. Rich, a very great show today. Lots of great information, great guests. You really certainly got all exercised up today. Love to see it. But unfortunately, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.